Welcome to the world of culture pop with Steve Mason and Sue Kalinsky. Culture, comedy, movies, TV, tech, authors, trends, pop. This is the Culture Pop Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 40 of the Culture Pop Podcast. We are brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani. I'm Steve Mason along with Sue Kalinsky. Sue, what are you doing?
I'm here with you, Steve.
Excellent. Cool movie we got to see called My Spy. Our guest today is one of the most prolific directors in Hollywood. His films include Naked Gun 33 and a Third, Tommy Boy starring Chris Farley, Anger Management, 50 First Dates, The Longest Yard, Grudge Match. It goes on and on. As I mentioned, his new film is My Spy, starring former pro wrestler Dave Bautista and Chloe Coleman, along with the always funny Kristen Schaal. Peter Segal is here. Pete, thanks very much for doing this.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious.
How are you guys?
Yeah, everything is great. You kind of grew up in the business, right? Your dad was an executive at MGM. What was that like?
Well, my dad was head of worldwide advertising and publicity for 11 years for MGM, and he worked on movies like Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago and, you know, a lot of the classics. And when we moved out from New York to L.A., to what was MGM at the time, which is now Sony, I would go visit him at work. And then I'd ask, you know, when I was like 8 or 9, and asked him if I could go to the back lot and get lost for a couple hours. And he had a guard, you know, take me across the street, unlocked the gate, and I walked into, you know, the greatest movie backlot in the history of Hollywood, which is now condominiums. But you walk down one street and it's Paris, turn the corner and you're in New York, turn the corner, you're in the Old West. And that's kind of, you know, what gave me the bug to, you know, one day possibly get into this.
How popular were you in elementary school?
I did get a field trip for I think it was maybe my 4th grade class, and we got to meet, I don't know if you remember the TV show, The Courtship of Eddie's Father.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But, you know, the cast of that and one other hospital show I can't even remember the name of, but it helped a little.
So did you know from being on that backlot that you wanted to someday direct movies?
Well, I knew I liked the process. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I do a lot of work with the USC Cinema School, and I, you know, lecture to kids and stuff like that. And one of the things I always ask is, you know, for people who are sophomores or juniors, you know, raise your hand if you know what you want to do. And a few hands go up, and raise your hand if you really don't know. And then most of the hands go up, and then I say, I was just like you guys until my junior year. I thought I was going to be a journalist. I was majored in broadcast journalism and English, double major. And then one day, I got an internship at CBS, local CBS, and I became, my first job was a fog wafter on a kids show. So I'd take the little kettle, the steam kettle, and I'd spray the fog, and then I'd take a piece of cardboard and I'd fan it and even out the spray. And I got yelled at by the cameraman because my kettle spurted in the middle of a take. And that guy became one of my best friends and later my editor, and, you know, Bill Kerr, and now he's actually editing Judd Apatow's latest movie with Pete Davidson.
Is that on your resume, fog wafter? I don't think I've ever heard those two words used together.
You know, exactly. I think I might have edited that one out.
So what led you to your first feature film as a director, Naked Gun 33 and a Third?
Well, so I was at KCBS as a junior when I was at SC, and then right after I graduated, I walked right into a PA job, a PA position, and there was a show on the air at the time, maybe a year later, that was called Friday at Sunset, and it was about things to do in LA on the weekends. And my first assignment was, you know, the best pizza places in LA. And I said, can I be creative on this? And they said, okay, just, you know, make sure you spell the name of the store correctly and get the address right. But sure, go ahead. So I did a black and white takeoff of Citizen Kane, and it won a little local Emmy award. And, you know, when I was 24 and they came to me the next week and said, okay, best pool halls. I said, can I do whatever I want? They go, okay. So I did a takeoff of The Color of Money, and then that won an award. And I started building a reel, and eventually got the attention of HBO and Merrill Markoe, who was David Letterman's ex, but also the co-showrunner of the early David Letterman show. She was doing an HBO special with Harry Shearer, and I did that. And then that led to really what my big break was. Tom Arnold and Roseanne had a series of specials that I wrote and directed. That's where I met Judd Apatow. We were both in our early 20s. And but in those specials, we had Chris Farley, Ben Stiller, and Jim Carrey. And those got some attention. That's when David Zucker saw those, and he was trying to segue out of the Naked Gun franchise and do a drama based on the life of Davy Crockett. So he was looking for someone to take over the reins. And that's when it began. And I had no idea, if you paid me $1 zillion, that's the direction my career was going to take.
You've made so many comedic films. Growing up, what was your favorite comedy?
I loved The Great Race and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. I mean, those two were huge inspirations to me. And then when I got a chance to work with Jack Lemmon, I told him, I said, The Great Race was just on last night and I watched it. And he said, yeah, kid, take notes. But that was Jack. That one really holds up to this day. I think, and also Young Frankenstein, I have to say.
Young Frankenstein is a classic too. Yeah. You have worked with gigantic movies. I'm just from Jack Lemmon, Lauren Bacall, Eddie Murphy, Jack Nicholson. I mean, on and on and on. Is everyone different? What is a set like when you're working with someone of that magnitude?
Well, it's interesting. I think as I've gotten older, I realize there's a common denominator with all actors, and that is pretty much the same for anyone in any walk of life. We're insecure, and they don't want to be embarrassed. And so they want to make sure that, you as the director are going to take care of them and tell the story in a way that is obviously going to be well crafted, but also not make them look foolish. And I didn't get that at first. And so, when I was starting, as a 30-year-old doing Naked Gun, it was tough getting the respect of Leslie Nielsen. And you would think that he would be the sweetest guy in the world, but he was very, very hard on me. And I understood why years later. And I remember, working with other older actors at the time, same thing. I would get the raised eyebrow, like, you're going to tell me something? I've had, John Ford direct me. So, I would say, the people that sort of took the oxygen out of the room the most were Jack Nicholson and Eddie Murphy. When those guys, came on the sets, even the other stars were starstruck. And that's a whole different level.
You can't really coach some of these actors, can you? I mean, what can you tell Jack Nicholson, really, right?
Well, it's interesting. If you've ever read interviews about Phil Jackson, at a certain level, when you're coaching, Jordan or Kobe or Shaq, you're not teaching them how to play. You're guiding. You're suggesting things to get people in the right mindset. You're reminding them where you are in the story so that they have, a gauge, because they may just be going scene to scene, because, shooting a film is grueling, especially if it goes for several months. And so you as a storyteller need to always, keep your eye on the large picture. So no, I would never tell someone like, Jack Nicholson how to do something, but I would suggest things, and I might also throw in joke ideas, in the moment, and he might do the same thing, and Sandler might do the same thing, and and that's when it's fun. I think that's when people start to relax, and you're creating something that's beyond the page at that point.
Yeah, I remember some years ago, I did stand-up comedy for a long time. I know Adam and I know Judd, and I got cast opposite Seth Rogen in Funny People, and it got cut, my scene. But Judd was one of those guys who yells things out like while you're doing a take. And it was, and I think some people think, oh God, that must be so disruptive and annoying. And I was like, no, it was just hysterical because you're going and you're going, and he's like, say this, and it was such a comfortable way to work.
Yes, I love doing that. I think I try to hire actors in the comedies that I do that have that skill. Some people do not. They really want to go by the blueprint and study what's on the page, and that's it. Other people like the opportunity. Once I always say, let's get one as scripted, and now let's play. But where Judd is as a former and actually current stand-up as well, I think has a freer flow of jokes going through his mind. What I like to do is I like to prepare the jokes ahead of time, alternate jokes. We call them alts, and we have alt pages. And, every night before we shoot a certain scene, I check our files, and I said, oh, yeah, several weeks ago, whether it's myself, throwing 4 or 5 options at the scripted joke, we'll put the best one in the script, but we have options. And then sometimes there'll be punch-up writers. And so the same thing, we'll do it, and then I'll say, let's try this one. And I don't bog them down the night before and say, memorize all 7 alts. No, I'll just feed it to them one at a time, kind of the way Judd does.
So you mentioned Phil Jackson and Kobe and Jordan. I'm assuming you're a big sports fan?
Yeah, I am.
Who do you follow?
Well, guess. The Lakers.
The Lakers, absolutely.
Yes, the Lakers, and I'm actually I'm a Rams fan from back in the Roman Gabriel days when my dad used to take me as a little kid to the Coliseum. So I go way back as a Ram fan. We
have a lot in common. I go way back as a Rams fan also. I go back to the 70s and Lawrence McCutcheon and that long series of quarterbacks that Pat Hayden and Vince Ferragamo and Burt Jones and Joe Namath and Dieter Brock and all those guys that didn't work out in the 1970s. I was a huge Rams fan and, of course, loved the Lakers as well. What do you think of this team?
I think it's great. It's so fascinating. Again, when I started, when I moved from New York, I was a Knicks fan, but then I think it was 72, the Knicks and the Lakers played, and that was the Wilt, Jerry West era. And then we had Showtime, and then we had, Shaq and Kobe, and now we have hopefully a new era. And we'll see as we get into the postseason. But, it's a good time to be a sports fan in LA.
You really dodged a bullet with that Knicks thing.
Well, I grew up in New York, and I sadly, Knicks and Giants and Mets. So the depressing trifecta.
So you did 3 movies with Adam Sandler. I absolutely loved Uncut Gems, and I think a lot of people's perception of who he is changed because of that movie. He was so entertaining as he went. I think about his acceptance speech at the Independent Spirit Awards, which was just absolutely hilarious. What did you think of the ride that he sort of went on, and how did that match who you knew Adam Sandler to be?
Well, when I started working with Adam, I had known him for a few years before Anger Management, but in that era of his career, he was doing, as I called it, one for commerce, one for art. And I would do 3 in a row that were the commerce. They were the big sort of, fastball down the middle Adam Sandler comedies. And then in between Anger Management and 50 First Dates, he went off to do Punch Drunk Love. And then in between 50 and Longest Yard, he did Spanglish with Jim Brooks. Mm-hmm. And I loved that, the fact that he was alternating. It gave him a lot of street cred, and, with critics who have always been brutal to him and didn't understand his kind of humor. But I think what happened is he got a little, he's very competitive, and as an athlete and as a filmmaker. And if those artistic challenges didn't reap the same kind of box office rewards that he was used to, he kind of shied away from them. And so by doing Uncut Gems, he kind of went back to that, freeing himself and just letting go and following a different vision. And it paid off, hugely. I was in New York a year and a half ago, finishing second act with Jennifer Lopez, and Adam was shooting his Netflix comedy special, and I went with some friends to New Jersey to watch it, and it was fantastic. By the way, that's another thing that I thought was a career milestone. It was just so incredibly well written and performed as stand-up specials. We went to dinner in back in Manhattan right after the show, and I met the Safdie brothers. They were there about to begin shooting Uncut Gems, and so they were asking me questions about what was it like when I worked with him, and I was asking about their story, and so I had a brief brush with the guys behind all that when they were really great guys.
So your new movie is called My Spy. Sue and I both have had a chance to see it, and it was, and I don't often use this, it was delightful. It was a very, very sweet, fun movie. How did that project come about?
Well, I was in post on second act, and which went well, and I think I had a good relationship with SCX, and they said, look, we want to keep this going, take a look at some of these stories that we want to tell. And I looked at that one, and I actually felt there was something similar to Tommy Boy in a way, that I felt like I knew Chris Farley was a huge talent, and I wanted to be the guy who broke him in a leading role. He'd done some cameos in other movies, but he hadn't had his own movie. And likewise, Batista, I thought was so incredible in Guardians. And I thought, let's take the makeup off and show what he's got, because he's a really good actor. And so we took it on, and it had, what I like about it is there's a theme of acceptance and fitting in. In addition to it, you might say it's similar to The Professional, Leon the Professional, in a way. That there's an unlikely relationship between this grizzled, tough guy and this sweet little girl who can also be tough as well. And I liked those elements, and I thought there was an opportunity, to tell a sweet story that could also be funny and rich and maybe break a new talent.
Obviously chemistry is key when you're casting. What do you do? Like do the actors get to hang out with each other beforehand to kind of get to know one another? Do they socialize? Or is that something that just kind of forms on set?
Well, it's different on every project. And I'm prepping a series right now called Heels for Stars, Lionsgate, and it's about the independent wrestling world in a small town in Georgia. And right now, all of our actors who are portraying wrestlers are going to wrestling boot camp, and so they're getting to know each other in a very unique way. And I think it's a very good bonding experience. Sometimes we'll obviously have the dinners that everyone can hang around and get to know each other. Some people like to rehearse. Some people don't like to rehearse. I never want to force that. Some people, Eddie Murphy, for example, kind of took the Jackie Gleason road of, I want to be as fresh as possible on the set and have ideas pop into my head and be able to do them. And I don't want to over rehearse it because that kind of kills it for me. Other people really need it. And so I think you just kind of, you guide, the whole group into an area, see what seems to fit that particular group. And, if nothing else, you're going to learn all about each other the first week of filming.
How did you find Chloe Coleman, who just seems like an absolute natural? She
really is. First of all, we hired the casting directors who had just done the Shining prequel, because they had, I think it was called Dr. Sleep.
Yes.
Because they had looked at 700 girls between the age of 9 and 11. And I said, you're hired because you already know who, and it was a global search. You already know who the good ones are. Please go to your top 50, give them the sides, and let's see the top 50. So that was a huge advantage. And Chloe was in that group, and it was whittled down. And then there was a screen test, basically, where we got a couple of the finalists, together with Dave, and they read a few lines. And literally there was, we chose a comedy scene and a scene that had a little more heart. And in the scene with Hart, she got us all choked up. I looked over and my casting director had tears streaming down her face. I said, pretty sure you've got the job. But she is, you may not even realize after our movie, she's co-starring with Dave Bautista. She went on to do a movie with Jennifer Lopez. Before that, she was doing Big Little Lies, acting opposite Meryl Streep and, Laura Dern and Reese Witherspoon. Then after that, she did a movie in Berlin called Gunpowder Milkshake with Lena Headey from Game of Thrones.
Wow.
And then, I'm not even supposed to talk about it, but she's in Avatar 2.
Wow.
So this kid is fire.
Yeah. So the movie comes out on March the 13th. I'm always curious about this. I've been with people on the days their movie actually opens. Do you keep track of, first of all, do you get nervous as a movie's about to come out? And when it happens, do you concern yourself with things like box office and all that on that opening weekend?
Well, I'd love to be able to tell you, no, none of that stuff ever bothers me. But my nose would be growing. First of all, a couple things. Yes, it's the closest I get to being a performer and going out on stage. When I sit in a theater filled with people, I feel like I'm on the screen, even though I'm not. I have all the butterflies and everything, and it's incredible when the crowd reacts the way you hope they will. And it's obviously, during the testing process, it's not great when they don't. But there's an interesting thing, and I have to mention this, I'm glad we're talking about this, because all we're hearing right now is stuff about the coronavirus and South by being canceled and March Madness. And because of all that, SCX, was hearing a lot of warning signs that this week and next week, the box office was going to take a hit. And so as of last night, we got moved a month. We're now April 17th.
Oh, wow.
So this is the first time in my entire 26-year career that anything like this, an act of God has happened that has affected, the release. But so we're having a screening tomorrow for a bunch of people, and, they're going to be among the first people that I say, by the way, I know it says next Friday on the poster, but if if you like the film and you want to tell a friend, you're going to have to tell them in a couple of weeks because it's not opening next Friday. So yeah, this is a first. It's, so I was all geared up to, have all the nausea that comes along with opening week, but now I've been given a bit of a stay of execution. Yeah,
I mean, that's fascinating because April 17th, I think, was going to be the James Bond date, and that picture's now been pushed to November. It really is. It's weird out there right now. I was at the Lakers game last night. Everybody's weird about it right now because I don't think anybody really understands it very well.
No, and here's the thing: moving Bond to November. If you think about it and you watch CNN or whatever you'd like to watch, Fox, they're not going to have a vaccine for anywhere from 12 to 18 months. So moving something 6 months is not necessarily going to help. Moving it 1 month for us is not necessarily what we're trying to do because no one knows how to deal with this right now, where everyone's making it up as they go along. We're trying to give ourselves a little breathing room so we can sort of take an aerial view at the whole landscape and say, okay, it seems to be under control or not. We may have to react again, mid-April. But at the moment, we did feel like right now there's just a snowball of, fear and questions. And we felt like, what they say is it's older people and children who are the most affected. Well, this is a family movie.
Yeah.
So, of course, we don't want to put anybody, at risk. So, we're giving ourselves a little breathing room just to see what might change in the next month. We're not predicting it's going to be solved, or unsolved. We just don't know.
Well, for this moment, April the 17th.
My birthday.
Oh, Sue's birthday. She believes this somehow coincides with...
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, come on. Sprinkle a little birthday magic.
Sue's birthday.
Sprinkle a little birthday magic on the opening.
There you go.
Okay.
Whenever it does hit theaters, it's a really, really fun movie. Dave Bautista's great in it, and we appreciate you taking a couple of minutes with us today, Pete.
Absolutely. It was nice talking to you guys.
Thanks, Pete.
All righty. Take care.
accident or injury, call Jacob and Ronnie. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mace. If you or a loved one is injured in any kind of accident, please don't wait. Call Jacob immediately for a free consultation. That's right, free. When an accident happens, it can turn your world upside down, so put the best on your side. Jacob doesn't even get paid unless you win. First name, first thought, first call, Jacob, Jacob, Jacob. After an accident, 24 hours a day, call 844-24-JACOB or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
And that is a really fun. Sometimes I don't know what we're going to get when we watch a movie in advance. This one really, really funny, made me laugh a lot, and also very cute.
It's a great script.
Yeah, really funny.
And, when I saw, you look at the poster sometimes. I know for me, I do. And I'm like, I don't know. This isn't something.
Sometimes the poster's like,
no, I just
pro
don't.
Wrestler, little kid, not sure.
Doesn't sound like my kind of film.
No.
But, it was smart. It was funny. It was poignant. And it actually had a great story.
It did. It had a very cool story. And as for the, that's crazy that the movie is being pushed off of its release date now to April the 17th. And what is going to happen to the movie business? You think about the impact of the coronavirus, movies, okay? One of the biggest markets for movies now is China. And so that's why the James Bond movies got to move. And I assume that's why Marvel is going to wind up moving Black Widow to later in the year also, because Black Widow is a Marvel movie that will play big in China. And who knows what's going on. I don't think they're telling the truth about anything that's going on in China right now.
No, it's really scary. It's like a really bad, made-for-TV movie.
It really is. It feels like we are in one of those movies, like that Dustin Hoffman movie, Outbreak, or one of those things. It is scary, and who knows what's going to happen with sports and all that stuff. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Culture Pop Podcast. Thanks a lot, and God willing, we'll see you next week.
Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll see you next week for an all-new episode of Culture Pop.